Welcome. My name is Peter Richards. I am the Regional Manager for Petrosys Canada. And today we're going to be broadcasting our webinar about the SeisWare integration with Petrosys. For this example, we are looking at SeisWare version 7.3 and Petrosys version 17.0 Service Pack 1. This webinar will be recorded and displayed on our website for later access. Our roadmap today is to use version 17 Service Pack 1 from Petrosys to illustrate connections and connecting to SeisWare and displaying interpretation onto 2D mapping. And we will also do some direct access of interpretation from SeisWare in the grid and contouring module to generate surface. We will also be displaying both interpretation as well as a grid with faults within our 3D visualization tool. We also will highlight the direct connectivity through the import tools of seismic and well data. And we'll quickly chat a bit about version 17.1 and later tools that are to come. Integration with SeisWare began with version 16.9, where we had 2D seismic and interpretation, 3D seismic interpretation and bin grids, fault data, as well as well data display. Connecting to SeisWare. Here's the Petrosys map view window where we can go to the Connection Manager module under File. As you can see, I have a SeisWare SQL Server project already connected, but I could come in here and use the Add button to add additional projects for this session by choosing the SeisWare data type or connection type, and using the Select Project process, I can browse for access-based SeisWare projects, as well as any other defined SQL projects within our connections tool. At this point, I won't be adding any additional connections. I'll be using the existing one that we have in here. I also illustrate displaying 2D seismic. Go back to our map, and within display, 2D seismic brings up our display tool. We choose the data source, SeisWare, and come to select any current projects that are attached. If you do not see the project here, you can go to the connection process of adding an additional seismic project here to make an additional connection. In this case here, we are going to choose our webinar 2D 3D project. I can choose a Petrosys or seismic list, to filter any line data for display. In this case here, I will turn that option off, and allow for all the seismic lines for display. We can use the default line styles here and set those up for all line data, as well as use the option up here to turn on and edit a line style, which we are going to use. I've set up a basic line style with as track line and set some parameters for shot point display and labeling. In our data type, I can connect directly to our SeisWare project and choose that horizon, Houston horizon. If I wish to do an isochron, I could choose a second horizon event, and it would calculate the isochron values and post those on the map. So I'm going to choose my time data type and display my ribbon map. As you can see, I've got my shot points labeled, my shot point symbols, and if I wanted to, I could annotate my actual pick values along the line as well. Next, we are going to display a 3D surface from our project. Come back to our map, go Display 3D Surfaces, Color Fill, and I will choose my SeisWare data source. Project's already been defaulted to the selected project. I go in and choose the 3D survey, and SeisWare projects can have multiple 3Ds, so you would see all the 3D surveys available here and choose which ones you wish to display, as well as coming into choose my horizon directly from my 3D survey, and the default is time, but I could have chosen an amplitude data type as well if it existed. And I will go OK. So there's our 3D surface directly from the project. And I will zoom in. So you can see the 3D surface. I'll also come through and display some fault data coming from my project. Come back to Display Faults. Choose SeisWare data type. Now I could choose shapefile data if I have polygons within a shapefile that I want to use as faults to display here, or some other fault data source here. In this case, I will choose my SeisWare project, which I have faults in. Again, it defaults to the one I've already got selected, and I see all the available fault set to use, and here I will choose my Houston faults to match the horizon I'm displaying, and OK. And there you have the fault displays on my surface. You'll see that there's a number of gaps in here too as well that in my interpretation, so I need to quickly come through here and maybe grid this data source with the 2D and 3D data as well as the fault data. So my next process here is to pull up the grid and contouring window and generate a surface model of my grid contours, or my interpretation. I'll go Grid, Create Grid. I'll go to my input data, and as you see, I have a data source selected here, but to illustrate how that is done, I will begin new. I'll add seismic data source, SeisWare, and I have other options here. I'll choose the project that I've been choosing all along is pre-selected. It's the one I've been have active. I will choose my Houston horizon again, time data source, and I have the option now to either turn off my 2D lines or to restrict or filter my 2D lines based on a selection file, a Petrosys selection file for seismic line data. And in this case, I will use all the 2D data. My 3D, if I have multiple 3Ds in here, I could toggle 3Ds on or off, or toggle all the 3Ds off and just do the 2D, but I have the options then to choose which surveys I want to use in this gridding process. I will go ahead and you'll see the information displayed down below. I will take the defaults that are set in here currently, but I will come into my fault tab and illustrate using my SeisWare connection to the SeisWare project. Choosing my fault for my faults polygons for my Houston event, and go down and go OK. And here I have the option then to update the horizon that I've already calculated. Here the process has gone through and gathered the data points for my SeisWare project. As you can see, it's pulled into 3D data points as well as the 2D data for gridding. I can also view this in a histogram process, and I have the ability to also come in and edit data from these displays if you happen to see a spike in the data or some data that you do not wish to include. If everything's okay, which it is, I will continue by clicking my gridding continuation process here. And it is now complete. I'll go back to my map and display my grid on my map. I'll zoom out, go display grid color fill. Here's the grid I just processed, and I'll take the defaults and add it to my surface. I will move this to the background, and in 17 we have the new click and drag process to move our information around in our display list. Let's zoom in and have a look at the results. You'll see it's done a fairly good job at tying the 3D to the 2D data and extending the grid beyond. Next, we'll look at exporting this grid we've just calculated to a Petrol project. Here I have a Petrol project that I will export my 3D surface into. I'll go back to my surface modeling tool, and I will go File, Export, Petrol, Grid. The grid that I'm going to export is the one I've just created in the gridding process. I've chosen my project through the plugin process for Petrol plugin to Petrosys. I've launched Petrosys with the plugin, so I have knowledge of this project that I'm working with in Petrol. I've identified that I want to write out a Petrol surface called Houston_SeisWare. And you have the option then to choose which folder it is, and I only have the one folder within the project, but it will allow me to place it into other folders and the type of data, etc. So I'll go ahead, and it's very quick and has already come into the Petrol location. I'll go in here and set some attribute data before display. We come into colors here, override some global properties so I can set that surface color display and turn my surface on. So you see it looks a little bit differently, but the colors are still, or the relationship of the surface is still there, and it's the same surface that we've generated within SeisWare. From the SeisWare interpretation within our gridding contouring tools. Excuse me. I'll go back to our PowerPoint. Next thing I'd like to show you is displaying the surface and grid information within our 3D visualization tool. Here we have our 3D viewer. I'll come in and display my 3D seismic surface from SeisWare. Choose my data source. Here's my connection to the project. I'll select the survey, the 3D survey, and I could have multiple 3D surveys in here. I'll choose my cloud spin survey. So one in there. Choose my Houston horizon. My time data type is set, and I'll take the defaults on the other information. So there is my surface coming in from SeisWare. Next, I'll display the grid as well. So display grid, and there's the defaulted to the last grid that I've created here. And I will just go ahead and take those particular defaults and display them. As you can see now, we've got our surface displayed on here. I can go to my listing here and just reorganize things. So you can see some of the surface information from the 3D on top of the grid that I've created. Next, we'll have a look at the import tools for SeisWare into Petrosys. When we start looking at the import tools, we go to the main Petrosys launcher under Import SeisWare. We have access now to importing our seismic interpretation and surveys for the 2D and 3D data, our fault data, into a Petrosys format. I connect to my data source. At this point, if we, when we're making these connections into SeisWare, if for some reason you have a username password defined for SeisWare project access, you would enter that. You can also save that into a secure location so that you don't have to continue to do this if you do have username passwords. So I made that connection. Now I've got my 2D tab here. I can choose and select which 2D data I want to import, as well as the 3D data. I've got my 3D survey here in inline and cross lines, as well as all my horizon information from the project. I can create this seismic data file and import the coordinate information for both the 2D and 3D, or what I've chosen. The horizon information can be imported in there, and we can import the fault data information from our project into Petrosys fault file. And that can be added in. We can also take the survey, the 3D survey outline. If you have multiple 3Ds, you can import those outlines as polygons and use those in later operations for controlling gridding or display onto the map, etc. We also have the capability of importing the 3D horizons that have been interpreted from SeisWare directly as grids into Petrosys, and which allows you to display those directly onto your map without having to do any gridding or processing as well in that fashion, or for calculations. We can also grab those horizons out of SeisWare and export them out to an XYZ file directly. There's also an import a well wizard that will allow you then to take SeisWare well data information loaded and allow you then to output well header information, formation tops, and directional surveys to to a Petrosys well data file and be able to work with that information offline, and as well taking it to partners or cutting out pieces of the data for partner distribution, etc. There is a configuration process for Petrosys when adding SQL Server projects into the connection file for access. And if there's any questions about that, please contact support, and we would be happy to help you out with that. That concludes our presentation today. Just to recap, Petrosys integration with SeisWare allows you in the mapping interface to display 2D seismic data and interpretation, as well as 3D survey, bin grid and interpretation, direct display fault data from our SeisWare project, as well as wells on the map. Within our surface modeling, we can grab the 2D and 3D interpretation and input those into a surface modeling process along with fault data information from SeisWare. In data management, we've shown you that we can import the seismic information to our Petrosys seismic data file to capture information for offline use or for working with partners, etc. But you can also capture faults directly from SeisWare and import them into Petrosys, as well as grids to work with pulling in 3D horizons into grids in Petrosys. Within our Well Wizard tool, we can also pull the well header and survey, directional surveys, as well as top data that exists within SeisWare into our own well data file here for use offline. We've currently support up to SeisWare version 7.3, which I believe is the latest version available from them, as well as multiple types of options here for 32 as well as 64-bit versions of SeisWare. We also support the access of data through our direct connections through SeisWare access projects, as well as those that are defined as SQL Server projects. For the future, post version 17, we're going to focus on being able to pull some of that well data into our surface modeling tools, as well as identify some feature upgrades that are required and do some upgrades of the existing tool set that we have here. Thank you for your attendance. And I'd like to note that there's an upcoming webinar on December 7th, 2011, using 3D visualization to improve understanding of 2D interpretation. As well, if you have any other topics that you feel Petrosys should cover, please send those topics to support@petrosys.com.au. We would love to have some information for you about some of the things you'd like to see, and that we can present to you and a wider audience. Thank you very much, and this concludes our webinar.